Hey guys, Matt. Chapter 43 is two topics. The first topic is called The Presidential Election is a Total Fraud. The second topic talks about or breaks down how a drunk sitting at a bar, say in Milan, Italy, or whatever example I use, could have actually reached Benghazi in under that supposed 13 hours while that attack was going down, so the military, couldn't respond, they couldn't get there in time, but I prove a drunk sitting at a bar could have gotten there in time. It's kind of a fun exercise. Now, look, remember, ultimately, when I go through and proof this book one last time, I'm going to do one last shaving on it to get it a little bit more palatable for people that really are in the infancy of coming into truth, not a reading for the old guard like I've been doing. So I keep the first section about the election as interesting as possible, but of course, almost everybody listening to this doesn't believe in a presidential election. Nevertheless, I'll remember who this is written for, who it ultimately will be written for, and I'll also explain my personal journey in when did I come to the conclusion that absolutely everything was a fraud. I'll be honest with you, and I've been honest many times. I did vote for Donald Trump. Of course, I had my doubts as to the system, but I thought reality can't hide any longer. If anything about what this guy's saying is real, well, I hope he gets in and then he'll start changing the world. I mean, did I really put all my hope into Trump? No. But I did go out and vote thinking there was like a tiny little chance that this was some rebel in the system that they didn't want. And people get on me like crazy about that. And I'm the first to admit, I didn't come out of the womb having full insight on how the world works. I progressed like everybody else. What I know now is just a world of difference versus when I was watching some of the Republican debates in early 2016. Yeah, I've come a long way, baby. But, so people get on me like I'm supposed to be born, out of the womb, like with this some golden child that knows everything right from day one. No, I've most of my understanding has come together over the past, I would say, 3 years. Sorry. I'm just being honest. So if you're not interested in the topic on the election, I will leave in the description the time where you could pick up the second topic if you want to skip the first. But at the end of the first topic about the election, I'm going to go away from the book and talk about what I've talked about before. Do I think that, voting for U.S. Senate is real? Is voting for House of Representatives real? And some things that just my current understanding of things away from the book. Chapter 43, Topic 1 of 2, The Presidential Election is a Total Fraud. Leading up to the presidential election of 2016, I remember thinking to myself that no matter what happens with this supposed vote, reality will finally be revealed. Said that many times on the old channel. Reality will finally be revealed. Is all of politics a fraud? I asked myself. I knew for certain that reality couldn't hide any longer. And I was right. At this point, we have no reason to believe any aspect of national politics is real. Now, I don't know exactly how far down the line the fraud goes. I will discuss that on the back end. For example, like, is the House of Representatives some little 2-bit House member that represents your local district? Is that real? I'll talk about it after the book reading in this section. For now, we'll just keep the charges at the presidential level. Yet, if it's proven to be a fraud at the presidential level, then what's the difference? What we know about politics then breaks down across the board, doesn't it? What do I mean when I said the election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton would bring the true nature of reality into the spotlight? How the hell can an election do that? Well, I knew that if Hillary Clinton would have won, then that act by itself would have proven presidential elections are 100% rigged. The woman was hated by tens of millions and unlikable to almost everyone else not in a fringe group. She supposedly had serious health issues, constantly coughing into the microphone, which was all staged. And she had that incident where she kept 33,000 emails. Sure, 33,000 emails from an FBI investigation by deleting emails from this server that she had hidden in a closet somewhere. I mean, the scandal just went on and on and on. Then you had all the strange circumstance surrounding her husband, Bill Clinton, and a whole new round of women, of course, coming forth in books and interviews talking about every form of sexual molestation Bill has been involved in with them. Things that make Bill Cosby look like Cleopatra's eunuch. People that were supposedly molested by Bill Clinton were actually seated in the audience at the second presidential debate. I think it was the one where Donna Brazile gave Hillary the questions and the answers beforehand so she could prepare. Look, I could write pages listing all the horrific attributes of Hillary and Bill Clinton. About 40 people close to the Clintons have mysteriously disappeared or died. The point is, I just knew, I mean, it was so obvious that if that she creature won and got in, it would immediately expose the system as being rigged. Sure, a tiny percentage of the country living in a misguided trance just loved Hillary. She would always have the support of certain stable or staple groups. The feminists, gays, recent transgendered, ex-Weather Underground members, and convicted domestic terrorists. but that doesn't amount to more than 10% of the total vote. So I knew a horrible hag like that could not win a real election if anything was real, no matter what creature was on the other side. Even something like Donald Trump. I mean, as bad as he was or is, and he's just a disgusting pig who runs his mouth, with Hillary, you had 3 decades of political failure, and she's not even likable on top of that. Failure. Where Trump, as much of a pig as you think he is, you hear stories about how he got things done. You hear about successes. So but he was absolutely, could never have been the monster, straight up, that Hillary was. Because one is a question mark, and one is a known demonic, satanic failure. Now to the Trump side. If Trump were to win the election, it would appear legitimate at first, but I knew it would be Trump's actions in the first few weeks, and especially over the first 2 months or so, that would tell me finally and definitively if anything about politics was for real. Of course, it was as I suspected, that presidents are merely puppets of something else. They're bozos carrying out the wishes of others, doing the bidding of those in the back room who really run the world. It took a bit longer than 2 months, but when Trump bombed Syria in 2017, and for anybody that still was holding out hope, I mean, that was the last straw. Trump's retaliation to Assad gassing his own people, like Assad would really risk the wrath of the United States and gas women and children in his poorest neighborhoods. That's really strategically important to the war effort. I mean, reality had finally been revealed at that point, without a doubt, when Trump sent those Tomahawk missiles into that airbase in Syria, talking about the babies that were gassed. And look, was I holding out hope at that point? No, but it was a joke. I mean, Trump pretending to be outraged and trying to show sympathy for the people that Assad had gassed when it was 100% staged. I mean, that was the last straw for almost anybody with a brain. Politics was a giant puppet show. Now proven that politics is a script with actors and puppets, all crafted to make people believe that they have a say in what this news calls democracy. We know now it's 100% a lie. In fact, after the Trump, quote, election, the script actually turned quite absurd. Well, how could somebody come to new conclusions about all of politics based on Trump doing basically the same thing that all other presidents have done throughout time, just following the same script of fighting war after war? In bombing Syria, wasn't Trump just acting like every other president? But yeah, that's exactly the point. No matter what president takes office, no matter what party goes in, nothing ever changes. Nothing. No one ever goes off script. The trajectory of government in all major aspects and areas, if graphed onto an X and Y axis, continues to move in a straight line from president to president. There's never a deviation. You have Republicans claiming to be conservatives and endlessly talking about budget deficits, shrinking government, and wasteful spending. And now in our lifetimes, we have multiple cycles of them getting into power, controlling everything. And what changes fiscally? Nothing changes. Spending increases under all regimes. Then we have Democrats coming into the power of the presidency and the House and the Senate. And then these liberals talk mostly of peace and of freedom and of equal rights and diversity. Nothing ever changes at the material level. There's a lot of talk, a lot of news stories. Look out your window. Nothing ever changes. Our most recent Democrat, Obama, received the Nobel Peace Prize just months into his first year in office. He went on to lead all other American presidents in waging war. Did anyone even stop to question why a man who had accomplished nothing in regards to achieving peace would be awarded the world's most notable prize? Did anyone ask why the Commission of Noble Assholes didn't stand up and demand he return the prize that he got after all the death that he created? This was actually a milestone date for me back in 2009 when he got this award, before I was truly awake to how the world really works. I saw that it just wasn't possible for a young first-year president who had done nothing in his life but whack himself off to win the Nobel Peace Prize. I didn't understand how the world worked in 2009, but I scratched my head going, what? How is this possible? Something else was going on with reality itself. In fact, he had taken no steps to end either the Iraq or the Afghanistan wars throughout all of his years as president. Oh, there was things that make the news, like pulling out of Iraq, but then they went back in, and it's all a sleight of hand. The trajectory of nothing changes. I mean, the headlines are there to fool people that things are going up and down when it's just going up in a straight line. It made no sense to me at the time, for good reason, trying to understand the decisions or the actions of President Obama. You can't understand it because it's not real. It was all part of following what I call the master script. The most powerful lesson in all of our lives is experience itself. When it comes to politics, this lesson is ignored by everybody. The next time people go to the polls, they will once again listen to the lies and believe all the things the politicians promise that they'll get done. Fool me once, twice, 3 times, 300 times, a lady. No, we've been fooled 3,000 times. I have no super insight. A few people in this truth community screamed at me for 2 years or so prior to this 2016, quote, election. In the comments, they basically screamed at Matt to wake up to all of this. Stop saying, Matt, you're holding out a tiny little bit of hope that Trump is some rogue faction that has actually got into the mechanism. They were right. I was blind, no doubt about it. I was deep down even though I was saying, look, this appears to be total BS and we're breaking down the fake shootings, breaking down 9/11, I still was saying, I want to still hold on to that 1%. Initially, I wouldn't listen to them, and I was not totally willing to go 100% to see that all of politics is simply not real. It's only when it became so painfully obvious in the first few weeks of the Trump administration, definitively in the first 2 months, did I finally allow myself to say, okay, I'm now at 100%. I'm going to, the little crack in the door I left open, see if the bird would fly back in, hoping the bird would fly back in. I'm just closing the door. The bird's been dead for decades. It ain't flying back into its cage. It's all made up. It's the mother of all scripts. When one day you become big enough, now I'm not talking to the old guard, it's written for a certain audience here. When one day you become big enough to see this as the way it is, because there's no other explanation for the madness, then the whole system changes right before your eyes. Almost all of reality changes right before your eyes. And you just see things differently when you allow yourself to admit certain things, or you admit certain things to yourself about certain aspects aren't real. All of a sudden you open your eyes and everything looks different. Everything's a different color, for example. When you, quote, see it, politics almost overnight becomes a ridiculous vaudeville act. Presidents all of a sudden look like big bozo clowns standing right in front of you that you could never see before. And this is where I believe it's about not about waking up, but about literal veil dropping. I believe it's far beyond mind control. I believe we literally wear something that you could best describe as veils. And it's not just one veil where you can see everything. There's hundreds of veils we need to take off across our lifetime. And I might, for example, where I am, I might have removed 100 veils. I think I can see 100 things clearly. But I know there's still probably 10 or 20 veils that I still wear. Our whole life is a veil removing process. And these are literal filters. So we just can't see it. It's not, I used to make excuses and think these were psychological defense mechanisms, when I know now it's far more than that. It's a trick of reality itself, but that's for another chapter. Okay, where were we? So we know politics is a script with puppets playing their part. Does that mean presidential elections aren't real? Yes, of course they're not real. Does that mean most presidential actions are not their own and others are directing what has now become a bad movie? Yes, there are others behind the scenes who are the puppet masters directing the actions of presidents. Now, I realize this is shocking to anybody new to these topics, or whomever may be stumbling upon this video, which is very unlikely with the little box that Google and YouTube keeps us in. But knowing what we know today, why should I or anybody believe that politics is real? How would you explain to me why nothing changes no matter what political party is in office? Do you have the urge to bring up meaningless party differences like gay marriage and pronoun laws in New York State for the transgender? The thespian troupe of news anchors will make a fuss over these so-called differences between the political parties, for it sends the message to the masses that there are two different parties that are at odds with each other. If there are no differences between the parties in what happens after the election, we know the trajectory of government moves in the exact same straight line. There's no difference in the parties after the election. Then that means there's only one party to begin with. I don't care what is promised before the election. Sure, there seems to be a lot of differences before the election, a lot of different types of promises made before the election. All that matters, of course, is after. Nothing said before the election amounts to anything anywhere. The news is expert in highlighting the tiny party differences, or what seem to be differences, and then making them seem like monumental divides and differences between, say, Chuck Schumer and John McCain when he was still alive. Couldn't even put a cast on his correct leg. In the debates before a big election, your candidate seems like a god, and the other guy at the podium, or whatever witch creature, if it's Hillary, the other one seems like the devil. But let me share something with you. Both candidates at these podiums during the political debates are wearing a disguise. It's the costume you want them to wear. And underneath the costume, both are the same exact individual. Identical twins, born under the same dragon's wing. In the crib, they both look like Rosemary's Baby. One only needs to examine everything that Donald Trump said he would do and compare that to what he didn't do. If Donald Trump was a winner in a legitimate election, he wouldn't even have given a full speech at the inauguration, considering how bad things had become, especially after 8 years of Obama. If it was real politics, he would have leaned into the microphone just 5 minutes after being sworn in and said something like this. Ladies and gentlemen, you didn't put me here to give speeches. You put me here to fulfill my campaign promises, centered on just two things. One, pointing out to the West, this swamp needs to be drained. And two, the rights of the individual need to be restored. He would have then marched off 5 minutes into it into the West Wing to start what he would call his American Restoration. He'd start that very afternoon. He did nothing, and as of years into it, he's done nothing. And these absolute morons are still sitting back waiting for Trump to make his move, waiting for Q to change the world. I mean, what? I could see if it was 2 or 3 weeks after the inauguration. I mean, is he going to make his move, say, a few days before he leaves office? I mean, what? People, these veils are literal, people. It is far beyond mind control. If Trump was for real, he would have at least have mentioned what are now thousands of violations of the federal government against what we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. Not only did he not set off quickly after inauguration to begin restoring the Bill of Rights and personal liberty, to this day, Trump has never even mentioned that there's a problem. Now, again, when I say thousands of violations against the Bill of Rights, it's more like tens of thousands. I'm just being conservative. Trump's done absolutely nothing that he promised to do during the campaign. For heaven's sake, this wall hasn't even been built yet. His zombie supporters give him every benefit of the doubt and make excuses all day long. They'll tell you how he's been blocked by Democrats, and there's just never-ending plots to take him down. He's blocked at every turn. Well, he couldn't have been blocked when he had the presidency and the House and the Senate. I mean, what? This is ridiculous, as Republicans, again, controlled everything but the non-judicial areas of government. Trump himself has complained that certain members of the government, like the FBI director and others in the executive branch, are not doing what they should be doing, and they're out to get him, and they're just throwing a wrench into the gears. But nobody talks, our friends, our family, our neighbors, nobody talks about the fact that these employees that he's complaining about work for him in the executive branch. They work for him. He could remove them with a 5-second email if they didn't do what basically he wanted them to do. But he's just powerless. He's blocked. That's like the CEO of Procter & Gamble, saying, I'm blocked by my vice presidents. Well, he's the CEO. What? It doesn't make any sense. The CEO can be blocked by the board, for example, and the chairman of the board, but that's like a president being blocked by the judiciary branch or other branches. He can't be blocked inside his own executive. To deny that politics at this point is a total script is to reject every bit of evidence we've been given across the course of our lifetimes that shows no differences between Republicans and Democrats outside of a few areas, like abortion and guns. Even in these areas, they speak about these differences, but it's just talk. Even in these supposed divisive areas like abortion, nothing ever changes, does it? Ladies and gentlemen, they must have a few minor differences on paper, so the script of the two-party play is believable to the masses. If the Hatfields sat down and broke bread with the McCoys every Christmas Eve, no one would believe they were fighting, would they? They must show the county a fight once or twice a year so people believe that they hate each other. There will always be highly debated tinderbox political topics between Republicans and Democrats, like abortion, for example, because they have to get Americans to believe that there are two sides at odds with each other. To make it really believable, the two sides must hate each other. However, other than abortion, which has serious consequences, the other issues where Republicans supposedly fight Democrats are tertiary distractions at best. In all the core areas central to our lives and restoring individual freedom, nothing ever changes. For the most part, nothing's even talked about. Nothing. Even when Republicans control all three legs of the stool, they don't go after abortion. Hear talk about late term or something like that, and if it gets so ridiculous that people are starting to see through the ruse, they might even throw late term legislation on certain states so people believe the system is really working for them. Trust me, the leadership on both sides wants abortion. The leadership on both sides wants abortion. How many more decades need to go by with nothing of any significance happening? with one party simply picking up where the other party left off before people will finally get a clue and realize they've been played. Homie, don't play that. They've been played. They've been had in the biggest ruse of all time. I guess that will never happen, though. People will never quite see it. Because if it hasn't happened during this ridiculous Trump clown show, it ain't never gonna happen. Behind the scenes, Republicans like the late, great John McCain sipped $500 bottles of cognac with people like Chuck Schumer and Dianne Feinstein. And they laugh at you. The dumbed-down Americans of The Walking Dead. They laugh at you as the waiter serves them $300 plates of Kobe beef that you paid for with your tax dollar while you struggle to keep the electric turned on. Okay, guys, going away from the book, we've pondered this over the years. Let me just tell you what my current understanding is, and of course I'm guessing, but the general concepts here I believe are correct. People would say, are real votes counted during a presidential election? And I think what they've installed, in my opinion, is what I call a triple fail-safe. So first off, they put up the two puppets, and no matter what happens, even if something unexpected happens, somebody drops dead, for example, they've already put up the two puppets that they know generally will do the bidding of the system masters. So they can't lose either way. It's a triple fail-safe. Are votes counted? I believe they are, because the system, I believe, is expert enough to create a situation where whatever candidate they want in now, they wanted Trump in, okay, versus Hillary. So they will actually create a situation where it makes sense that the candidate they wanted in would get more votes. For example, I think it was obvious when Hillary was rising up in the polls, or doing a little bit better, then I think they put in that coughing, and they would bring in scandal around Hillary and the emails and the coughing and they'll try to push her down because they wanted Trump in. Because I think they really wanted, they've set it up so their puppet wins. So they want to count votes because they know the vote count will yield the result that they exactly want, for example. Now, and it's a triple fail-safe. If Trump, for example, look, these are just mortal, I don't know, maybe they're not, maybe they are NPCs, maybe they're not human beings the way we are, but for the most part, they're of men and of women, and they're fallible. And the day before the election, Trump is photographed actually trying to grab a you-know-what, and his hand reaches out, and somebody gets it, and it goes across the internet, and that's a situation they can't control. So at that point, they can either say, well, I think the triple fail-safe is if it's close, they can rig the votes. But in that situation, for example, where somebody actually filmed in a club Trump's hand going out trying to go between somebody's legs or whatever happened, and it's just a total disaster, or he literally goes mad and starts putting his hand down his pants right the day before the election, then they know no matter what happens, he's not going to get the votes. So it's a triple failsafe. Well, then Hillary goes in; she'll do the bidding of the dragon, the way Trump is. But obviously, Trump is totally working for what they want to do right now to the American people. Trump is even more of a inflammatory catalyst than Hillary would have been. Trump is playing exactly the role that the system wanted played at this time. Now, if it's close, and they want Trump to go in, and the people would never, it's so close that if Trump, I think they can actually, assuming votes are really counted, they can do some vote manipulation. So I believe they've actually installed a triple failsafe. So no matter what, the agenda is still going to go in the exact direction that they want. It's just that if a disaster happens and they don't get their candidate of choice in at the right time, then maybe the trajectory of what the sick things they want to accomplish is not as steep. The line is not as steep up the graph. It's a little bit more shallow. In terms of Senate elections and House of Representatives, I think that there's basically two different things going on. I think some major Senate elections The Senate is far, far more important than the House of Representatives. And I believe there is tremendous manipulation in the Senate. It could almost, for like a major senator like Chuck Schumer, for example, they might even rig it like they would do a presidential election. But for the House of Representatives, these are just literally useful or useless idiots, however you want to see it. There's so many people in the House. These elections are real, legitimate. They have no power. They have no ability to influence anything. The junior Congress people go in and they just bow down to however the leadership wants them to vote. Nancy Pelosi sends out an email and tells them how exactly they're going to vote, and they don't get out of line. A few that do get out of line, that's why they make them run for election every 2 years. 2 years. So the reason for that is, to me, is obvious. Every 2 years the House has to be reelected, because anybody that goes rogue, they'll get you right out. They'll do whatever they need to do. You will not get through the next election, even on a tiny little case by case basis, if they have to rig it. But generally, I think it's a real vote, because you come in, you're amongst 500 and some others. You can't do anything. You can't move the needle. So why wouldn't they let it be real? You just come into the House and you can't do anything. If somebody like me, were to run for the House and started to really gain traction, and knowing what somebody like me would do and what I would say, they would get personally interested in the local election, and you know, probably there would be pictures of me caught with my pants down. But ultimately, I don't think they care. I think they just let the House, just the vote happens for real. The people really run, and most of the people running, they don't have any idea how the world really works. In my opinion, somebody newly elected to the House of Representatives, that just the Republican candidate beat the Democrat, and they go into Congress. You and I know 100,000 times more about how the world really works. And even once they get into Congress, they're not going to be exposed to any information, and unless they start getting on these committees, like the Intelligence Committee, things. But you're not going to get on that committee unless you play ball. See what I'm saying? So there's thousands that have come and gone from Congress that know not even anywhere close to what you and I know about how the world works. They completely go in as puppets, come out, and they actually think they actually did something. Bunch of morons. Guys, just a little prologue before the next section on Benghazi, Libya, and how they say they couldn't get military assets there in time, but a drunk in Italy could have gotten there in time on his own. But in terms of what happened or what didn't happen with the 13 hours of Benghazi, there's a movie made about it. Obviously, we know many things put forth in this reality, put forth by this government, have been completely fake and false flags. Obviously, we know that. In fact, the default should be fake and false flag at this point before believing anything that they say about anything. But I just can't go there. We just don't know. Okay. Now, and without being almost 100% sure, I'm just not going to jump on a bandwagon and cry fake, 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 fake. This one's a little bit different, guys. This is a little bit different. It's complicated. Was Ambassador Stevens actually running, weapons through Libya to supply Al Qaeda and ISIS and Syrian rebels, and they cooked this up to actually take him out? It seemed to be a total stand down, and it's possible some of these guys came to the rescue. All right, so I just can't. Yes, of course, it could be another fake version of reality, but I just, without knowing, and with in this case an unusual amount of evidence that balances the other side, I just can't go there. Maybe Tyrone Woods did stick his neck out and give his life. Maybe Glenn Doherty did give his life. I can't go there in this. I'm the first one to cry fake about a lot of stuff, guys. But this one's a little different. Okay, this one's a little bit different. Trust me on this. I've looked at this for years Years. And there's some things about this, the whole story, that stink, but there's some things that also point that this shit really happened, and there's some people that actually may have gone to the aid of these people and disobeyed a stand down. So I'm just going to rip the official story. That's where I'm going to keep it for this one. Oh, and Senator, one more thing. Love the suit. Um, I'm at the point where I'm almost saying everything's fake. So you know where I'm coming from. Let me just give this one, throw this one at you in case you think I'm a little quote gun shy to call fake on this. I'll call things like Operation Northwoods and the release of those documents completely fake. No, I don't buy documents just slip out that say that the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the generals under President Kennedy cooked up a plan that they wanted to put in place that would actually bomb American targets and put American lives at risk. The American government bombing America put lives at risk in order to blame it on Castro. Now, people are upset at me and they're not interpreting what I'm saying correctly. Am I saying they're incapable of planting false flags and bombing American targets? Of course they're capable of doing that. 9/11, hello? 9/11, hello? I'm saying the document wouldn't be released. I'm saying that if the document didn't just get out so Truth Stream Media could snatch it up, and the document didn't just get out into the truth community, and look, we got him now. Ooh, here's a printout of Northwoods. We got him now. General Lemnitz or whatever. No. Okay? If the document is put out like that or whatever, it didn't just slip out. It's on purpose for whatever their sick goal or aim was. So I'm calling Northwoods fake. I mean, I call a lot of shit fake. I'm not quite ready to do it on Benghazi. Let's just have fun with the ridiculous official story. Topic 2. Benghazi, Libya. The U.S. didn't send anybody to help? It happened on Tuesday, September 11th, 2012. Tuesday, September 11th, 2012. The 11-year anniversary of 9/11 to the exact day, Tuesday. We should have known something big was coming. Whether real, fake, or false flag, we should have really expected it. Shame on us. Here's what we're told. A Jewish video maker in the United States made an anti-Muslim movie, loaded it up on YouTube, and when Libyan Muslims saw it, they took to the streets in a murderous rage. The armed mob rushed a State Department outpost and killed everyone they saw, including Ambassador Chris Stevens. That story is both ridiculous and nonsensical. Here's how the planning conversation before the Benghazi attack must have gone down on September 10th, 2012, the day before. Hey, Ahmed. Yes, Omar, what is it? Have you seen this video on YouTube? It mocks the Prophet. It mocks all of Islam. It's blasphemy. Yes, I saw it. Do you know who made it? No. We only have his YouTube handle. Do you think he's an American who made it? Well, most people on YouTube are Americans. What are we going to do about it, Ahmed? What are we going to do about it? Get the boys together this afternoon. We know of a small U.S. State Department safe house in East Benghazi. Let's go over there tomorrow night, barge in, and kill everyone inside because of that video. Ha! Okay, Ahmed, that sounds good. Does that make any sense to you? Why didn't Muslims in 1,000 other cities around the world, like Mosul and Damascus and Ramadi and Tehran and Cairo, why didn't all those Muslims get pissed off, blame the video, and go after the U.S. embassies in their countries? If that video pissed them off so much, let's hope they never see the music video Gucci Gang. So, let me get this straight. Not one Muslim outside of Benghazi raised a hated stick at America over this video. What is interesting is, the day after the attacks, the video only registered a few hundred views. Personal note, I actually, with my own eyes, went to it immediately on YouTube. And the main video, there was only a few hundred views. And I don't remember how many, but definitely under 1,000. So that will tie in later. Of course, because this video supposedly set the Muslim world into an uncontrollable rage, the video was taken down by YouTube. If the mob attack was, quote, about a video, and what killed Ambassador Stevens and what went down, like they said, was about a video, then what did the anniversary date of September 11th have to do with it? Was it the date or was it the video? They can't keep their story straight. The movie about Benghazi attack is called 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. This means the attack went on for about 13 hours. The main point of this section is, no matter what the attack exactly was, it went on for a long, long time. Enough where the friendly forces of the United States military should have probably sent somebody. Just let's leave them all to die. We can't get there in time. Guys, let me go away from the book for a second here, because even a lot of people, or most people in this truth community, have never seen that video. I went right over to it. And again, let me just go off the reading here and tell you what happened. It's so bizarre. I went over to it as soon as I could, and it only had, I remember it, I don't know, if I want to say how many views, I was like 350 views. That sent the entire Muslim world into a rage. 350 views, and it wasn't being, I'm pretty sure I was on the main channel. It wasn't like it was being copied, and this was a brand new news story. It wasn't all over being mirrored, or I don't think so. I really don't. I'm almost positive. I found the video, the main channel. But this video, this anti-Muslim video made by this supposed Jewish filmmaker, was so absurd, so ridiculous. I mean, it was all part of the script. All part of the script of because no matter what went down in Benghazi, I'm still not willing to say it's fake, fake, fake. But of course, the whole thing was cooked up. How this video sent the Muslim world into a rage. Of course, that's all cooked up. The video itself was probably made by an element right inside of the U.S. government, of course. But let me just tell you, the scene I clicked on, I mean, it was, I can't express to you how absurd it was. So let me just get it. People are like, get it out, get it out. I don't know, like, okay, how did it go down? I'm just going to say the prophet, because I mean, again, it's blasphemous to millions of Muslims to even talk this way. But I'm just saying what I saw. The prophet is in a tent, or he comes into a tent, and there's a woman in there, and he's talking to her, and he's like trying to talk to her, and he's crawling along on the floor, and he's like, his head is like dangerously close to her ankles and legs, and then he's like he starts pushing his head like up into her leg, and then getting closer up into, like, coming up into her dress as he's talking to her. It was bizarre. And then he got on a donkey or an ass and rode away. And I mean, yeah, of course, if it was anything real about it, it was meant to mock. It was meant to belittle and mock. But again, it wasn't. There was no real filmmaker who produced a film to belittle and mock the religion. It was made by the elements of the one world system to cook up exactly what they wanted to cook up. But I'm just saying, there was no real movie here. It was, I can't even express to you how absurd it was. But it was, that's the style of it. It was meant to inflame. I mean, the Muslim world, to be honest with you, they didn't give a shit about the video. They wanted it to inflame more than it did. I don't think anybody gave a shit about it, but they still used that in the story that they cooked up. Okay, so please now allow me to document a bizarre bit of history first, or the way history has been presented to us. Do you remember Obama flying off the next morning to an election fundraiser in Las Vegas? The skinny little man emerged from the White House, walked into the Rose Garden, gave a speech saying about whatever happened during the night in Benghazi wasn't terrorism, and then flew off to collect money. How sick and bizarre is that? A major attack on the day of September 11th, and the skinny little sock puppet can't cancel a fundraiser? Ugh. Then the entire Obama administration, led by Susan Rice, appeared all over the media on the Sunday shows, saying that what happened to Ambassador Stevens in Benghazi was not an act of terrorism, but rather it was a response to an anti-Muslim video. That doesn't make much sense either. If information came out that, say, Muhammad Atta flew his plane into World Trade Center 1 because he was upset that there was no Muslim representation on primetime sitcoms like Friends, would they say that it wasn't terrorism? The act itself creates the label of terrorism, not the reason, like no Muslim represented in primetime shows like Cheers and Seinfeld. What pissed the jihadis off in the first place? Well, how the heck does that matter? Here's the main point of this section. The official story told us that no military assets could reach these men in time. We now know that a drunk in a bar in Italy could have reached these men in time, on his own. A drunk in a bar could get there in time to help, but the $1 trillion DoD infrastructure and assets in 80 countries around the world and hundreds of military bases couldn't get there. Although we will follow the itinerary of the drunk in a moment to see if such a claim is possible, any second grader with a degree of common sense knows the U.S. military could have arrived in Benghazi in about 1 hour, let alone 13 hours. Now, I'm well aware of the occult number of 13. I'm well aware they made a movie about it. I'm not ready to go fake here, okay? Let's just make fun of the official story. The United States Air Force and NATO has multiple bases in Italy. Once an F-16 is in flight from Naples, Italy, the flight time to Libya with the use of its afterburner, for example, is only about 25 minutes. At the very worst, fighter aircraft could have been launched from over 10 U.S. Air Force bases or NATO bases all across the EU and Africa, and all of them could have reached Benghazi in just about or just over 90 minutes. All of them. The U.S. DoD has something called AFRICOM. Where do you think they are? Africa. Why are all those Air Force bases in Europe in the first place? What are they doing in Europe if they're of no use to anybody, even in an emergency? They were set up to be emergency responders to possible Russian aggression. Of course, they had potentially 100 planes ready to go at all times. Or what the hell are they there for in the first place? I mean, the people that scream stand down, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of good people in the military. Down in the chain of command, they're not all in on it. Yeah, they're ready to go. Somebody had to have told them to stand down. Unbelievably, the movie 13 Hours shows what is now documented that a CIA drone was actually flying overhead, monitoring the fighting as it was happening. Where did the drone come from? Most drones carry missiles. If all the planes couldn't get there, and people actually believe that, where maybe 500 planes could have gotten there, then why didn't they send more attack drones? Or any attack drones? The only drone up there just had a camera, we're led to believe. Well, they say parts of the military, or AFRICOM, did try to mobilize a response team. They were told to stand down and not go. Stop and think about that for a moment, because that is part of the official story now. Do you realize how sick that is? It goes against 200 plus years of historical precedent, in the military at least, that Americans don't leave anybody behind. Isn't this like one of the leading pledges of all the military branches, that nobody's left behind? For some reason, this pathetic excuse still reigns today. We couldn't get assets there in time. What? Not only could the United States military have gotten hundreds of aircraft there in time, if you include the drones, it will be demonstrated here that an unemployed drunk in Naples, Italy, could have gotten there in time. Here's another excuse those who read from the script like to pull forth on us. They didn't know it would go on for 13 hours. They would have sent assets, but they thought it'd be a quick attack. They figured it would be like over and done, and they figured they couldn't get there in time, so they didn't even try. Unbelievably, that is also vomited from people's mouths. This excuse is not just feeble-minded, it's infuriating. Say you're down at the local bar, and your wife calls you in a panic. Dave, somebody just broke into the house screaming that they're going to kill me. Honey, I'm not down the street at Jack's bar like I said I was going to be. Me and the boys went across town, the Hooters. We're all the way across town. There ain't no way I can get there in time if somebody's in the house right now, so I guess I'll just stay here. Plus, it's overtime and the Redskins are second in goal. Amazingly, there are millions of thick people who have used these types of excuses to protect the image of their government masters that they love so much. Excuses like just couldn't get there in time, so they didn't think to send anybody in the first place. So let's see now how our drunk does versus the $1 trillion United States Department of Defense. For this exercise, assume our drunk is in a little bar in Naples, Italy. It's over a 2-hour drive from Rome. In properly setting the scene, our drunk has just said no for the second time that night to an Italian prostitute soliciting him for sex, and the place smells of beer taps that have never ever been cleaned. To finish setting the scene, our drunk's drink is now half full, and he's pondering maybe if the whore will take $20 or €20 off so he can go upstairs with her. We'll assume our drunk runs a tab, so there's no delay in paying his bill in responding to Benghazi. Suddenly, our drunk gets word of the attack taking place. For our purposes here, we'll assume he mistakenly was sent Ambassador Stevens' final email. He decides not to finish his 6th beer and flies out the door towards his car. This drunk knows that the only city that will have direct flights to Tripoli, Libya, is Rome. So he drives north at just over the speed limit because he knows he's drunk and he can't assist anybody from behind bars. 2 hours and 30 minutes into the attack, and our drunk is now running from the parking garage at the Rome airport into the terminal. He had booked a flight on his phone while driving up, and his plane leaves for Tripoli in about an hour. Frustrated and feeling helpless waiting at the gate, he's forced to sit and ponder the situation while the attack in Benghazi rages. There's a 24-hour McDonald's in the Rome airport. Because it's about a 10-hour drive from Tripoli, Libya to Benghazi, Libya, along the northern coast highway, he has little chance of arriving in time to help out if he drives from Tripoli once his plane from Rome lands. So as he waits in Rome at the gate, he waits for his flight to Libya, he makes calls to private aircraft and helicopter companies that operate out of the Tripoli airport. On his 5th call, and just 20 minutes before his flight is about to board, he finds a private pilot in Tripoli who agrees to fly him to Benghazi in his small Cessna for €600. Sensing desperation in the Italian, the Libyan pilot overcharges him by about 70%. Nevertheless, he books it. What other choice does he have to reach Benghazi in time? The plane arriving in Libya, the man deplanes via stairs down to the tarmac and asks to be directed to the hangar where small planes depart. Another passenger who speaks Arabic talks to a baggage handler on his behalf, and the man points to a distant hangar that looks like a rusty metal garage. The drunk, now sober, runs for the hangar and a few minutes later finds his pilot waiting for him, with his Cessna fueled and the engine on. The flight time to Benghazi in a small plane is just under 2 hours. The drive time from Benghazi and the Benghazi airport, where the Cessna is going to land, to the safe house where the attack is taking place is just over 20 minutes. Now here are the results. Total time for the drunk: a 2.5-hour drive from his bar to the Rome airport, plus 1 hour waiting in the airport for the flight to take off, plus 1.45, which is in the air time to Tripoli, plus 30 minutes to find the local pilot and for that plane to take off, plus 2 hours in the air on the charter flight, plus 20 minutes to find a car in Benghazi, plus about 20 more minutes to finally arrive on the scene to help out. The drunk's total: 8 hours and 25 minutes. That's the best case response time for our drunk to save our people in Benghazi. About 10 hours would be the drunk's worst case response time. Either way, the drunk has beaten the $1 trillion infrastructure of the U.S. military, the Pentagon, and Langley. At this point, we have to make this conclusion. The fight, some sort of a fight in Benghazi that killed Ambassador Stevens, was likely real. Almost everything else about the official story of Benghazi is cooked up bullcrap. Not going to go farther than that. If not one military asset was sent to save Ambassador Stevens, the only assumption one can logically make is they wanted him dead. Go back to believing a video caused all of it if you want. By the way, where is that video maker today? Nobody ever talks about this. It's like a reality breakdown. Where's the video maker today? He was supposedly put in jail years ago. Why hasn't one news outlet covered this strange case? Has anyone ever interviewed this video maker? Where is he? What's his name? It's all bullshit. I don't care what an old New York Times article pulled up on microfiche says or will say at some point in the future about a video maker. To me, he never existed, this video maker. It was probably the United States government that made the video in the first place. I'm just ending the book reading here, but just a quick note or two. Do you remember the weird stories about this video maker? And I don't know if they ever put a name to this guy, and he was put in jail, not for making the video. I'm hoping we're not at that point where you can make a video under the First Amendment and be thrown in jail. I'm hoping we're not quite there yet. We're close. He was put in jail for some other reason. That was the last news story that came out a few weeks after Benghazi. And I think probably so many people were calling for who is this video maker? Let's hear from him. That they had to whip up some story about he went to jail. But none of the news, 60 Minutes, 2020, all these, nobody ever followed it up. What happened to the video maker? It's, and you say that to your family and friends around your Memorial Day picnic today, and they look at you like you have two fucking heads.